All right, we should talk. I would actually want to have kind of an open conversation. I invite you to go into the comments and continue the conversation. We made a video last week. It was polarizing. I don't even know if polarizing is the right word, because you guys were mad in the comments. Not necessarily at me, some of you, I'm sure, but just you guys were fired up. The most popular video on this channel has 1.5 million views. And it has fewer comments than the video from last week, which has 128 at this point right now. The comments, some of them were they were comments. And I'm not here to like defend myself. That's not what I want to do with this. I want to have an open conversation about the video from last week, because we want to continue doing videos like this. So to just preface all of this, we made a video last year. We did a torture test on the NAF's Lander, which I thought is probably about the best $50 knife out there. And it did okay. It did fine, but I think we overthought that video. I think we went a little bit too far into planning and editing, especially. We edited that video for 3 weeks, which is crazy. That's more time editing than we've ever spent on another video. I think that actually kind of screwed us, because after that video, we wanted to do another one. We purchased some more knives to do that too. I bought an Umnumzon, a Hinderer, and a few others that we bought explicitly to torture test. We even have the scripts written out. It's been over a year. And we kept kicking the can down the road because we wanted to do it right and be somewhat scientific about it. We just wanted to do it right. And we just got way too deep into the weeds. So this opportunity presented itself to us, and we ran with it. We got this Ozark trail knife at Walmart a few weeks prior to showcase all the new knives at Walmart. It was really just to show that Walmart is stepping up its game. The Swiss Tech knives are really nice for the money, but this knife was the standout from that video because it's so impressive. It's $10, and that still just doesn't register for me. And since those two videos, if you look back to when we made the first video and like Google Trends, this knife blew up after that, and they're gone. You can't buy them anywhere. They may come back in stock, I don't know. Historically, they have not. When Ozark Trail releases a knife that's popular, they sell out and then move on to another one. Hopefully they bring this back, because I do think this is a good knife for the money. That's a very, very important qualifier. But this situation, a bug out and a knockoff for $10, an 1/18 of the price, presented itself to us, and we ran with it. So we shot this video pretty much off the cuff, very little planning. Everything we did for this video was basically just planned from the NAF's Lander. We just took all that stuff, and from our Preparinator that we've done at Blade Show a few times, and we had applied it to testing two knives against each other and ran. There wasn't a lot of thinking about it. There wasn't a lot of planning. We just did it. And in the moment, I mean, there was stuff we did outside in the parking lot here that we had not planned on at all. Like me throwing the knives up in the air open. That wasn't smart, but we did it and it was fun. And that was the thing. We had more fun making this video. I did, at least. I can't speak for Ricky, but I had more fun shooting this video than I have pretty much any other video on this channel. We've had some real fun here, but this was so much fun. So we want to do more like this in the future. And that's why I want to have a little bit of an open discussion about this, what our plans are, like how we plan to be a little bit more transparent about what happened, and even showcase the results a little bit better than we did, so there's a little bit less confusion, because the comments are obviously a little bit mad about a few things, and I want to address that. I'm not here to defend. I just want to shed some light and have a real conversation with you guys, because I've always preferred clarity and candor. Is that the word? Honesty, candor.
Sure.
Whatever. I want to be honest with you guys. I'm real. I'm a real human being, and it didn't even leave a sour taste in my mouth. I'm very happy with the video, but I just want to clear the air a little bit and talk about a few things. So let's start with the elephant in the room. How much Benchmade paid me to make this video? A whole lot of nothing. It's preposterous to think that Benchmade paid us to make that video. This video looks very bad for Benchmade. They made an EDC knife, which, to be fair, is one of the most popular modern knives right now. But I broke it in half by hand. And let me tell you, if anybody sponsors me to do something, there is zero chance that I could publish me snapping their knife in hand, or by hand, Like, that's not going to happen. This kind of made them mad. They knew that we were doing this. We asked specifically for a plain Jane bug out to test against the Ozark Trail. They didn't really, I don't think they knew about this knife when we asked. They found out when we asked that this knife existed, and yeah, they're not too thrilled about somebody copying their design. It's a pretty close copy. But they weren't happy that I took the knife and snapped it in half. Why would they be? They weren't happy about a lot of things. But I had a great conversation with Benchmade after that video, and I explained to them that we knew that they wouldn't be happy about this when we made it. Ricky and I went back and forth about whether we should even reach out to Benchmade or if we should just go buy one, because we figured that they wouldn't like us destroying one and showing how it fared against a $10 knife. We figured it would probably not go that well for Benchmade just because this has full liners and there's a lot of things about this that make it a little more robust, which makes this one look worse. But there's a lot of other stuff at play here. So yeah, Benchmade wasn't happy. But that's totally fine. The conversation I had with them was, I'm going to have to make decisions and do things on camera, especially if we start testing things that are going to make you and other companies upset. That's a stance I have to take. I'm willing to make you guys upset because I want to get real information out there. Is it really important that I can break this in half? Not especially, because you shouldn't be doing this with a knife anyway, but the fact that I could, I had to share that. So Ricky and I made a conscious decision when we were shooting that was not a result we were expecting, but we were going to publish it anyway, no matter what Benchmade felt about it. And we want to do that moving forward with anything we test on the channel. If it breaks, it breaks. There is no bias. And I understand why you guys might feel like there is some. And we're going to talk about that. But at the end of the video, just another way to dispel that Benchmade paid me any money for this. At the very end of the video, I didn't recommend either of these knives. I recommended a Hogue Deca, which is probably the closest competitor to the bug out, because I prefer that. If I'm going to carry an ultra lightweight knife with a crossbar lock, I am going with a Hogue Deca. That's just the truth. If Benchmade paid me anything at all to make that video, there is a 0% chance I could have published it and saying that I would buy a Hogue Deca over the bug out. So there's that. If I were to recommend anything different, because at the end of the video, I do think we were a little rushed, which is our fault. That's not an excuse. It's just the fact of the matter. I would probably recommend something else. What I said at the end of the video was, it would take 18 of these to offset one of these. That's not true, and I was just in the moment, off the cuff, and I said something that wasn't entirely true. That's fine. Sorry, but I guess the point I was really trying to make is that if you buy this Ozark Trail, you're probably going to break it. We showed that it broke much easier than the bug out, not the handle. That's, again, nobody's snapping their knives in half intentionally. With stabbing and throwing and cutting and prying, the Ozark Trail broke considerably easier, the blade, and there was very little damage to the blade of the bug out. This blade, if you put a new handle and new liners on it, this blade would be totally fine. You could touch it up, it'd be totally fine. But you're going to break the Ozark Trail. I'm not the first one to snap the tip on it. There have been other people who have snapped the Ozark Trail tip. It's just chippy D2. It's questionable heat treat at best. At worst, it's still D2, but the geometry, because it's hollow ground and very thin, like, it's not going to be super strong. You're going to break this knife eventually, so you're going to need 4, 5, whatever you're going to need. Some of you might never break it. If you just open Amazon packages, you're fine. But the point is, I would rather get something $40 or $50 that is definitely better quality over this Ozark Trail knife that you're going to need multiples of. That was the point I was trying to make. I don't want a knife that I'm going to use and know that it's probably going to break or can break. If I have to use it a little bit outside the recommended use, I'd rather get something that I know that I can abuse a little bit and it's going to be okay, like a Civivi or something of that nature. There's Kaiser Drop Bear, which is about $100. There are other ones. Actually, there's a Drop Bear, maybe it's a mini or something, but it's coming out and it's like $70. There's also the Yonder that's coming from Civivi. Our friend Zach designed it. There are a billion different options, and I understand why you might want like 4 or 5 Ozark Trails to keep one in your truck, keep one in a bag, keep one everywhere, have a backup. But I personally recommend and have always recommended buying something a little nicer with a little better durability than having to replace something. That's just my take. It's a difference of opinion. You can like the Ozark Trail, buy 5 of them, and be happy. There's nothing wrong with that either. And there's also nothing wrong with liking the bug out. And to address the transparency for future videos, because I don't want anybody to think we're taking money to destroy somebody's knife. I don't know why anybody would pay us to do that to begin with, but just for the transparency, moving forward, I think it's probably best if we buy the knives that we're going to destroy, unless it's something that's very, very difficult to get our hands on. But we're not like taking one from a friend and sending it back after it's broken, so we're probably going to just have to buy the knives. If we do get a knife from a manufacturer, we'll disclose that, just like we did this time. But just know, no company in their right mind is going to pay to see their knife destroyed. And that is actually why we have channel sponsors on this channel, because we want the ability to do things that are a little bit removed. Big Idea Design, I've worked very closely with them for years. They don't really have a say in what I say on the channel. They're cool with whatever happens. So is Worksharp. Whatnot's new, but they're really chill too, and they really don't work with knife brands directly. So like, it's the whole point of the channel sponsors was so that we can do more stuff that's industry related and not have to have overlap or potential conflicts of interest. But if it makes it better, maybe we do buy the knives that we're going to destroy. That's fine. I don't care. I'm not worried about it. But to address some of the bias concerns, there were a lot of people who thought that we gave the bug out a lot of passes and were harder on the Ozark Trail. And there was one comment in particular that said that anytime we had like good results from the Ozark Trail, we would run the test again. Anytime the bug out seemed like it was doing a little better in a test, we would move on. And that's, you know, it's provable, but it's untrue, because we had hours and hours and hours of footage that we cut down to 40 minutes, which was still long in my opinion, but I wanted what we had in there. The truth is, we did all the same tests on these knives, and the reason we would run it again is because we got a result that didn't seem right, not because it was an Ozark Trail or the bug out. We did everything first with the Ozark Trail, so we'd decide to do it again just because we were like, that doesn't seem right. And we'll get to sharpness tests in a second, because that's another point. But we ran those tests again because I do them multiple times anyway, every single time I do it, but also because the results seemed a little weird, so we wanted to just confirm. But when it came to running tests again, we typically were actually physically harder on the bug out. So when it came to the staple test, the Ozark Trail bent pretty much immediately. I pried a little wrong, bent the tip instantly, and then I had to change how I was prying. The bug out, I did that intentionally just to make it fair, and I actually went much harder. I pried all the way up with the bug out multiple times and never had any issues with the tip bending. And then we went through the rest of the test. So in that scenario, we actually were harder on the bug out. The same is true when we were stabbing the knife into the table and breaking the tip. The tip broke off the Ozark Trail instantly. Like, as soon as we stabbed it and put any kind of lateral tension on it, it snapped. The bug out didn't snap, and I did it over and over and over and over, and it was totally fine. So throughout the entirety of our testing, we actually put more tension, more torture on the bug out than we did the Ozark Trail. And that's actually exactly what I would have expected from a $10 knife with a thinner blade stock, a questionable heat treat. Like, I don't know why those results were surprising to anybody, but we were not giving the bug out a pass. We were actually doing more with it because I really wanted to test it. It's really all it comes down to. And there was another point in the rewatching the video, I noticed that I said something about it's also probably the cardboard. Part of it is this cardboard too. We only showed like part of the context for that, and it was when I was cutting the cardboard with the bug out, and it does sound like when we're watching the video back that I'm giving an excuse for why the bug out's struggling, but if you look at the entirety of the footage, both knives were actually struggling, right? Ignore the edit, the entire raw footage, both knives were struggling through the cardboard. And I was saying that when we were cutting with the Ozark Trail and with the bug out, and it was a continued thought from like 5 minutes prior that the cardboard's also probably the issue. It was a little bit soft, and instead of just cutting straight through it, the blades were both getting hung up because the cardboard was rolling instead of cutting. It was kind of soft cardboard, and it just wasn't holding up well. That's fine. It's just out of context. It definitely sounded like I'm giving an excuse for the bug out for why it's not doing as well, but they were both doing pretty bad. At the very end, I actually said the Lander did better at this than both of these knives. 49, 50. I think the Lander handled both of those better. I think we did 100 cuts with the Lander. So yeah, it's just context with editing. Things get cut out just for time or whatever other reason. And yeah, it does seem like things get skewed, but I assure you, I had no dog in the fight. I didn't care what happened to the bug out. And if I did, we certainly wouldn't have published the knife snapping in half. And back to the testing of sharpness, that one's on us. I've always tested with the string that you tension yourself, and the problem with that is that that's a variable, right? You're never going to get consistent results with something that I'm tensioning myself. I can do my best to try and get about the same tension every time, but there's going to be a variable there. So moving forward, I think, do we have them in the box over there? So instead of using this, which you have to remove this string, loosen this, pull this string, put it through here, tighten this down, and then tension it underneath this. You have to put your own tension on it and tighten this down. So you'd have to do that exactly perfect every single time for the results to be consistent. Instead, we had these, I just never used them, but people suggested we use these. These are pre-tensioned cut tests. It's the same material, it's just pre-tensioned. So they all have the exact same tension on them, which means you're going to get consistent results throughout all of your tests. And that's why we were running so many of the sharpness tests, is because we were getting weird results, like results where the knife seemed sharper after we cut a whole bunch of crap with it. That didn't seem right, so we ran it again. Yeah, I think the results were okay. We're not being super scientific anyway. I think they were close enough for us to determine S30V had better edge retention than D2. That's probably not a surprise to much of anybody either. It's totally fine. D2, you've always known that you got to touch it up a little bit more than, say, a modern Super Steel, or even some of the older ones like S30V, S35VN. You know, the point is, D2 is a little softer. You're probably going to have to sharpen it more. We just wanted to see. We didn't test it, I think, thoroughly enough with cuts and everything, so all those results are kind of moot, but both knives did fine anyway. Moving on. Addressing some of the things I think we could do a little bit better next time, or maybe we didn't do well enough this time. Number one is safety. It wasn't until like the third drop test with the knives open that I realized I was dropping them within like an inch or two of my toes. Probably not the smartest idea, especially without steel toes on. So be a little safer there, but especially with bending the bug out. I did not expect this knife to snap in half. I've always wondered, intrusive thoughts took over. I tried it, and then it snapped, and then I see a blade spinning down towards my feet. Again, not the smartest. There are definitely some things we could do to worry about our safety a little bit better. And there were actually some really good suggestions from you guys in the comments for things we could do that would make it better for the testing, like more efficient or more repeatable, and then also safer for us. Obviously, safety glasses and different personal protection. But yeah, there are other tests, like instead of us driving the knife into plywood and torquing on it, maybe put it in a vise and torque on it. You know, there are definitely some other things that we could do to be a little safer with the videos. The other thing I think we could do a little bit better is show the knives in real time a little bit better than we did. For example, a lot of comments pointed out that the bug out broke and the Ozark Trail didn't. That's technically true. The tip broke, and the bug out is technically in two pieces now in a way that makes it unusable. But so is the Ozark Trail. We didn't show this that well at the end, I don't think. We showed it a little bit, but not as in much detail. It bent to a point where it can't close, right? That's as far as it will close. And I don't trust this lock, right? You could probably still cut with this if you were in a survival situation. But let me tell you, if you're in a survival situation, you can cut with this too. So if your knife breaks on you in either of these ways, you're really in about the same situation, except this one can't close and this one's missing half its handle. They both failed, but they both failed doing things that nobody should ever do with their knife anyway. So the point is kind of moot. We were doing it for fun and for laughs and for pure entertainment, not for science. It is important to know that you could break this by hand, but you would have to be completely, like, negligently misusing your knife. One thing we did poorly is show the damage or the differences in results up close and in a better light. So we did show that there was some rolling when the blade would interact with the standoff, and we showed a few things, but I think we could have taken a moment to the side and assessed the damage a little bit better and a little more directly so you guys could see. And there were things that were clear to us in person that maybe didn't get conveyed in the video that well. like the rattle when you would close the Ozark Trail. Fine. Action.
Oh. Is it making a noise?
Yeah, but it's just like, it's the bearing noise.
Like
It's centered again.
Oh, really?
It's centered. Yeah.
Did you bend the blade back?
I don't know, but it's centered.
That's great.
There's a lot of blade play now.
Oh, yeah. It sounds loose.
Yeah.
Like, from all the way over here, I can hear it.
This one's fine and centered. I think we definitely could have done a better job showing the damage in real time and talking about it a little bit more closely. The worst thing is that we wrapped it up really quickly. I didn't take any time away from what had just happened to gather my thoughts and talk about the results. Obviously, they're both kind of useless knives now, and they're going to be really good for a wall behind us, but I didn't take some time, even just 5 minutes, 10 minutes to gather my thoughts and talk about what happened or what I would recommend. Anything, nothing, no takeaways. I just, off the cuff, immediately after I snapped that in half, just started talking, because that's kind of what I'm used to, off the cuff. And yeah, I think we could have come up with some better closing thoughts, like suggesting things like the Yonder and some other budget-friendly knives over even the Hogue Deca. Somebody suggested that we do this with the Hogue Deca. I think that's a great idea. I think it's a great idea for us to do a lot of this with a lot of other knives because it's fun. You guys seem to really enjoy it, even though you guys really seem to dislike Benchmade. That's fine, and really love this knife even though it failed also. Like, both of these, if I were to give them a grade, would be a fail. You cannot carry this knife anymore. You can't close it, you can't carry it. And you're not gonna fix it. It's a $10 knife, you're gonna go replace it. This one, you may be able to replace it. I don't think you can buy liners. But it doesn't matter, it's broken. It failed the test as well. The main difference here is that this is a $10 knife, and you could get 18 of them for the price of this one, but the difference is that this was made to be a cheap knife that everybody wants to buy, and I think they knocked that out of the park. This is an American-made knife that was meant to be light duty, and I think it serves its job for that, but it is a lot more expensive. It's also American-made. American-made goods are going to be more expensive, and if you want to support American companies, you're going to have to be okay spending a little bit more money. Do I like the fact that this one was 115 when it came out and now it's 180? Absolutely not. I don't like that, but it's the fact of life. Things are more expensive now. Love or hate it, that's a fact. Also, when it comes to this one snapping in half, there are other bug outs that would not. This is the newest one that came out this week, I believe. It's got aluminum anodized handles. It's not going to snap in half. I might break the blade, but I highly doubt it. Very, very doubtful. But they also have a titanium one, carbon fiber. I don't think any of those would break either. You can get Flytanium scales for it. You can get this knife and carry it for a long time, customize it, make it yours. This knife is only ever going to be this knife right here. There's nothing wrong with either of those. If you like American-made knives, support an American-made company. You're going to spend some more money. If you want something cheap, disposable, it's going to break, you have 6 of them, get the Ozark Trail. It's totally fine. But again, my recommendation would probably go with something like a Yonder or something in that realm. If you are budget conscious and you want something that's durable, you want like the best of both worlds, Civivi, Kaiser, they all these other companies have knives in that $50, $60 range that are not going to snap, they're not going to break easily, and they're going to be good quality. But again, if you want to support American, you're going to have to pay for it. That's just what it is. So, love or hate it, that's where we're at. I think both knives failed, but also we were doing stuff we shouldn't do with a knife anyway. So, I hope you enjoyed it. That's it. Let us know in the comments what you think about any of this stuff. If you think I'm still wrong on it, let us know. If you still hate Benchmade, let us know. If you still love the Ozark Trail, let us know. But also, let us know what you want to see us do in the future. Next, I mean, we have it right here. In fact, the very next knife that I want to destroy. My favorite knife. So that's it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, carry on. And thanks Benchmade for the giant check. I mean, it's great. Is that good enough? Like,
yeah.
Does this work?
Yeah. What are you doing with your share of the money?
I don't know. I was thinking about buying a boat, maybe a second house, like a beach house.